Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist. And I'm going to share with you today a question that tortured me during my recovery. I truly believed that I needed to figure out the answer to this question in order to recover. And the question was simply this: where is the line of personal responsibility with something like binge eating? We know it's a compulsion, so there's a sense that we lose control. We aren't in touch with our own will. We're told that willpower and discipline is not enough to break through. You can't just decide to stop binge eating if this is something you do compulsively. So then when we look at it through that logic, it's like, well, then it seems hopeless, right? If this is something that is so powerful and it takes us over, then it's hopeless. But we're being told it's not hopeless, that people can recover from binge eating. Well, then that means that we're supposed to do something about it, right? That we are capable of changing, so therefore we need to change. This is like, it seems like this paradox, this clash of, it is not your fault. Like, this cannot be helped. That's what compulsion is, and it's possible to recover. How do those two things coexist? Well, I'm glad you asked. When we're talking about the line of responsibility, like what is actually your responsibility in your recovery in order to get better, that is not to be the big problem in your life. Here's how I would put it. Everything you've eaten up until this point is not your responsibility anymore. It's outside of your control, so how can it be your responsibility? That doesn't mean it's not worth exploring, understanding, looking into the past for information, but when you are beating yourself up, you can't find the nuggets of gold. You can't see the nose on your own face because you're so in that cycle of blame, frustration, shame. The other thing that's not your responsibility is the future. So quite often we try to protect ourselves from the pain of the past by seeking redemption in the future. It's okay because tomorrow it's going to be different. Tomorrow I'm going to be different. So when we're talking about the responsibilities that we have to ourselves, first thing I want to say is it's about responsibility in the moment. The only time we truly have any autonomy over our behavior is in the moment. Now, by that logic, you might say, well, then that means if I have an overwhelming compulsion to eat, in the moment, I should be able to just go, no. But the thing is, for most people, in that moment of compulsion, the part of your brain that is capable of taking responsibility has gone offline. And we need to understand why that part of the brain keeps going offline. One, if there's primal hunger, that's going to win out. So your primal brain is stressed. So therefore the part of you that's going, oh, how do I take responsibility for myself, doesn't care, it just wants the food. Or maybe it's emotional dysregulation, or you're in conflict, in which case you're splitting off and we have to shut parts of ourselves down when we're in conflict with ourselves because it's such an unbearable state to be in. So again, the part that can take responsibility goes offline. But then here's what happens, is when that part that is capable of taking responsibility in the moment comes back online, it decides to take responsibility for the thing that has already happened, beat yourself up about it, or try and take responsibility for the future, make all kinds of promises. It's okay because we're going to do it better later on. Do you see what's happening here? The futility of it means you stay stuck in exactly the same pattern, which is why this idea of taking responsibility for our healing tends to happen outside of the compulsive urges, at least to begin with. I go back to my favourite saying, everybody tries to stop binging by trying to stop binging. They just go, when I'm in that situation and I feel that urge, I just won't do it. Doesn't work. If it did, you wouldn't be watching my videos. So in the broadest way, and I know my videos frustrate some people because I'm not specific enough in my advice, but in the broadest sense, what it looks like is moment by moment, just showing up for yourself. So that is going to look like eating enough. That is going to be being aware of how you are speaking to yourself. It's a recognition that now is the only time I have true autonomy. And how do you choose to use your free will in the moments when you feel free? And if you're someone who says, I just feel like I'm in compulsion all the time, my thoughts are running my head, like it's not even me in there thinking, it's this critical voice I have to listen to all the time. I don't feel like I can take control of anything at any time. Of course I make myself feel better by telling myself I'm going to take control in the future. So I'm going to quote Viktor Frankl here, who talks about the last of man's freedoms is to choose our attitude in any situation. You may have a critical voice that talks at you that you do not have the power to shut off. But if we're talking about it as a critical voice, we're saying it's not you. It's like living with someone who's just a pain in the backside. What attitude do you want to take towards that critical voice? For some of you, that might be the whole fierce compassion that Kristen Neff talks about. It's a firm no when it comes up. We are not speaking to ourselves like that. Or you might see your critical voice as actually trying to help you. For some people, this makes sense. And when they engage with their critical voice from that perspective, what are you trying to do? They can have a different relationship. But that's not everybody. For some people, the critical voice really does feel malicious, really does seem to be intent on tearing you down. But it developed for a reason. If your critical voice is somebody else's voice, your mother's voice, kids that taunted you on the playground, if it's their voice, that is when you need the fierceness. You push back because this isn't you. When it's a critical voice that comes from you because you concluded these terrible things about yourself because of the things that happened to you, that's the voice that's usually trying to help. Because it's saying, if you could just be like this and be like this, everything would be okay and you'd be acceptable. It's trying to help that one. The other one isn't. So where does the line of responsibility begin and end? What is within our control? What is not within our control? I think this is where we start. We start with the word attitude is not sitting quite right with me. For me, it was more like a softening. Like I softened and I'm letting go of things. This is during my recovery. And I'm deciding that I am going to try and live my life even if I always struggle with binge eating. And that was a crucial shift for me because for years I was like, my life is over unless I can figure out this binge eating problem. So for me, I found a gentleness inside myself that I didn't even know existed. And I believe that we all have it behind the noise. This for me comes into bigger questions about who are we? You know, if we are only the result of our conditioning, that's a pretty depressive conclusion to me. And I don't want that to be true. We know how the black and white thinking really feeds into things like compulsive behaviors. So the moving away from black and white thinking, for me, kind of the opposite of black and white thinking to some degree is humility. It's going, I don't know everything. I don't know what I should do. I don't know if I could have made a different choice in that moment. Maybe I could, maybe I couldn't, but I don't know. So am I going to always assume that I should have done that? The I don't know mind opens up space for new possibilities. And for most people who struggle with this, to really find a sense of peace, this is changing the way that we think and feel. And our behavior then follows that. Because our behavior is just a reflection of what's going on inside us anyway. But when you fixate on just trying to change the behavior without going inside, that's when I think we end up just stuck in these same self-defeating cycles because emotionally and psychologically you play out the same pattern, so the behavior cannot change. So I would say that people's behavior can be completely outside of their control if their thinking doesn't change. Because we're all just believing what we think in the moment we act, right? Even with a binge urge, right? That urgency of it, like I have to have it. It feels like the end of the world if I don't. The minute that feels inevitable, it is. And then afterwards you tell yourself you should have chosen something different. But the minute it feels inevitable, it is inevitable, which is why we go to the mind and the emotions first in the way that I think about this problem. And just one last thing before I end. If you are not logged into YouTube when you watch my videos, you will not see all the videos that I have done, because some of them are restricted, apparently because of the content, because I'm such a controversial figure. So this is not about subscribing to the channel, although that's always nice, but if just so you know, if you're not logged in, or you're under 18, or YouTube thinks you're under 18, you will not be able to see all of my content. I'll leave that information with you. You can do with that as you please. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.